In this video, we'll do a breakdown of the iconic track Deep Cover, also known as 187 by Dr. Dre and Snoop, and this is the track with which a then very young Snoop Dogg, then known as Snoop Doggy Dogg, had his breakthrough in the rap game. And even though the track was released a long time ago in '92, it remains a classic and the lyrics and the beat remain straight fire and off the chain. And not everybody knows that there are actually 3 different versions of Deep Cover or 187, and we'll do a full breakdown in this video. And we will start at the very beginning, and that's how the track came about in '92, and it's really a classic story that you need to know about if you're truly a Death Row fan. And all of this happened even before Dr. Dre's album The Chronic was released. And the fun fact is that even though many fans consider Deep Cover or 187 as a classic track, according to Snoop, Dr. Dre hates the record and they only performed it a couple of times in their career. We will also do a quick breakdown of the music video that was also released for the track and the results that the track had achieved when it was released. After that, we will cover all the 3 different versions of the track, and if you count the clean version as a separate version, there are actually 4 different versions. And I will also explain on which albums they were released and what the difference is between all the versions that are available. And last but not least, I will also do a breakdown of 2 other tracks that are also related to the Deep Cover track. So like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're down with this movement and you want to help to keep the Death Row Records legacy alive. I would really appreciate that, and it's a small effort for you, but it's a big gesture for me. And there are many more interesting videos coming soon, so stay tuned. And if you don't want to miss any new uploads, make sure to click on the notification bell. And with that being said, creep with me. Now let's dive straight into the topic of this video. In several interviews over the years, Snoop has told how the track Deep Cover came about, and it's a cool story, and it went down like this. In '92, Death Row Records had just been founded by Suge Knight and Dr. Dre, and it was before Dr. Dre's first album The Chronic was released, and Suge and Dre had created the opportunity to do a track for the movie soundtrack for the movie Deep Cover. And according to Snoop, Suge was in contact with Sony and he needed to convince them to do the track for the Deep Cover soundtrack. And Suge had actually told Sony that they already had a track done, which wasn't the case, and he also told Sony that he would play a part of the track over the phone for them so they could hear it. And based on that, Sony would decide if the track would be used for the soundtrack. And in reality, the track hadn't been recorded at all yet, but Dre only had made a beat for it with the classic bass line that goes like this. Dum 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 dum, dum 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 dum. And the beat samples a couple of 60s, 70s and 80s funk songs such as Undisputed Truths, I Know I'm Losing You, the song Bad Times by Tavares, and Sly and the Family Stones Sing a Simple Song, which provided the drum beat. The bass line is similar to part of the bass line found in the jazz composition Zoltan, written by Woody Shaw and performed by Shaw, organist Larry Young and Joe Henderson and Elvin Jones on Larry Young's album Unity. And on the same day that Suge was supposed to let Sony hear the track over the phone, Dre played the beat for Snoop over at Dre's house in Calabasas, and he asked Snoop to write the lyrics, and he said that the song was for a soundtrack, and he only told Snoop that he wanted his verse to start with the lyrics, "Tonight's the night I get into some deep cover on the incognito tip." And then Dre told Snoop that he was going to the gym to get his workout in, and that Suge would call Snoop later that day to discuss everything further with him. And in several interviews, Snoop explained how everything happened, and he said, quote, "The way the song happened, we had Calabasas at Dre house, and he had no furniture, and he was like, I'm going to the gym, and he put this track on. We got to do this for the soundtrack, and I don't even know what the effing movie is about." He was like, "I need you to write something to it. I want my first lines to be, tonight's the night I get into some deep cover on the incognito tip. Sure gonna call you and tell you what it's about." End quote. So then Dre went to the gym and Snoop started writing the lyrics to Dre's beat. And in an interview from the early '90s, when Snoop was still very young, and this interview took place after Deep Cover was already released, he said this about writing the lyrics for Deep Cover, quote, "When I wrote that song, it was like a whole lot of frustration was on my mind, and I was hungry as far as wanting to work, and I put my whole heart on the line with that song. That's probably why so many people felt me off that song and wanted to dig into the vibe of Snoop Dogg and see what's really going on, because that song was so real and was so from the heart." End quote. So about an hour or 2 later, after Dre had left, Suge called Snoop and he said to him, quote, "Doggy Dogg, I got these people on the phone from Sony. It's a movie called Deep Cover. I need you to freestyle for about 25 to 30 seconds and then I want you to cut it off. And cut it off like you're cutting it down, and then I'm just gonna tell you that I will call you back. End quote. So Suge would call Snoop back that same day when he had the people from Sony on the phone, and then Snoop needed to play them like 25 to 30 seconds of the song so that the people from Sony could hear it. But in reality, the track hadn't even been recorded yet, but Snoop would put on the beat and then he would freestyle his part over it so that it looked like as if they already had recorded the song, and then he needed to act as if he would cut the tape off, and after that Suge would tell Snoop that he would call him back later so that Suge could finish the conversation with the people from Sony. And a quick side note is that me personally, I really enjoy these kind of stories, and this story also gives an idea of the type of entrepreneur and businessman that Suge was. And I can also imagine that for Snoop, who was still unknown at the time, there was a lot of pressure on his back, because on the same day that he was asked to write the lyrics for the track for the deep cover soundtrack, he basically also had to do an audition for the people from Sony over the phone. And based on that, Sony would decide if they would use the track for the soundtrack. So the whole deal for the soundtrack basically depended on a very young Snoop at that point. And on top of that, he needed to freestyle over the beat, and he needed to do that in a type of way that it looked like it was an actual song that was already recorded that he was playing for them. And of course the beat is an important factor of a song, and that was off the chain in this case. But if the lyrics wouldn't be good enough, it probably wouldn't have happened because the overall picture wouldn't be right. And of course Snoop already had quite some experience with rapping and freestyling because he started doing that when he was in high school. So he said to Suge that he agreed with the plan and that he would wait for Suge's next call. So a few hours later, Suge called Snoop again and he told him, quote, "I got the people from Sony on the phone. Let them hear it." End quote. So Snoop did what they agreed, and he put the beat on and he started freestyling and pretended it was the song he was playing over the phone. After about 25 to 30 seconds later, Snoop cut it off and Suge told him that he was gonna call him back later. So later that same day, Suge called Snoop again and he told him, "We got the soundtrack, now we gotta finish the song up." And Snoop was like, "What's the movie about, cuz?" And Suge told him it's about an undercover police officer and it's called Deep Cover. And Snoop replied, "Damn, I went to jail for selling dope to an undercover police officer. How about I just take my story and put some life on it and put Dre in the middle of it?" And Snoop was under the impression that he had to ghostwrite the track for Dre. So when Dre came back from the gym, Snoop let him hear the verse that he wrote for him. And when Dre listened to it, he was like, "Nah, I don't really like it." But Snoop thought it was okay, so he really had to convince Dre that everything would be fine and it was going to be a tight track. So Dre agreed, and then he told Snoop to write the second and the third verse. And Snoop was like, "How about we do this together?" And Dre was like, "Yeah, I need you on there." So eventually Dre recorded his vocals and he put his little twist on it, and Snoop also recorded the vocals for his part of the song. And in an interview Snoop said this about it, quote, "I was just laid back on that song. Our dialogue was basically centered around a movie, and the movie was called Deep Cover. It was a tale of an undercover cop becoming a criminal but still playing the role of an undercover cop. So in the way I put it down, was like the rap went with the movie, but then again it didn't go with the movie because I wrote the rap before I seen the movie." End quote. A couple of weeks later, Dre told Snoop that they were gonna do a photo shoot, and he told Snoop to come over to pick up a couple $100. So Snoop went over there and he got like $200 or $300, and he went to the Compton swap meet and he bought the white Sox jacket and the outfit that he had on in the Deep Cover music video. And Snoop still thought that he had to buy the outfit for the photo shoot. So when he got to the location that they told him to go to, they said to him, "The first scene is like this." And Snoop was kinda confused because he thought that it was a photo shoot instead of a shoot for a music video. So on that day they shot the scenes for the music video, and it was the very first video clip to feature Snoop Doggy Dogg. And in the first scene you see Snoop, Dre and a Kingpin in a smoky office, and Snoop has to decide between hitting the pipe and being caught up. After the introduction the music starts, but the rest of the video is rather cut to cut and is a mixture of takes in black and white and some scenes from the movie. And some scenes also take place on the rooftop of a building with the skyline of downtown Los Angeles directly behind. And in those scenes Dre and Snoop both wear different outfits. And in the music video there's also a scene with Dre and Snoop sitting in a car wearing business suits, but it actually has no additional meaning to the plot. After its release, the Deep Cover soundtrack album peaked at the Billboard 200 albums chart at number 166 in July of '92. Apart from the soundtrack compilation, it also appeared as a single and also on Dr. Dre's first round knockout album, which spent 2 weeks on the Billboard 200 at number 52. Later it was also released on several greatest hits albums, and I will go more into detail about that a little bit later in this video. And like the artist indication on the original 12-inch vinyl says, Dr. Dre introducing Snoop Doggy Dogg, and that was also the first time that Snoop was featured on an officially released record. As a single, it had no major breakthrough regarding sales, but it launched Snoop's career and gave him a buzz before the release of Dre's debut album The Chronic, on which Snoop also was heavily featured. Despite the fact that Deep Cover is considered an absolute classic by many fans, Dr. Dre himself was not really feeling the song, and according to Snoop, Dre actually hates the track, and this is what Snoop said in an interview about it, quote, "He hates the record to this day," referring to Dr. Dre. "We only performed the record probably 10 times my whole life. He don't understand that record, that's the birth of the rebirth," end quote. In another interview, when Snoop was asked what song he had to convince Dre that it was a hit, he said, quote, "Deep Cover. He didn't think Deep Cover was a hit. When we did the record, you could tell he really wasn't with it or feeling it. But then the record started growing and getting bigger and bigger. And it's like he had to get with it. So it was like the next phase was let's go ahead and knock this album out," end quote. And with this album, Snoop was referring to The Chronic. And a little fun fact that not many people know about is that the song Nothing But a G-Thang was already recorded before the Deep Cover track was recorded, but it just wasn't released yet, and that wouldn't happen until later on the album The Chronic. Snoop spoke about this in an interview and he said, quote, "What people don't know is that G-Thang was done before Deep Cover. It just didn't come out. The Deep Cover soundtrack had came across our lap and Suge and Dre had worked it out to where they could get a song on the soundtrack," end quote. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, there are 3 different versions of Deep Cover, and if you count the clean version as a separate version, there are actually 4 versions, and you will notice differences in lyrics, drums and background on all the different versions. And the first version is the original version of Deep Cover, also known as 187, and it was released on the Deep Cover soundtrack in 92. You also have the Deep Cover single, which was also released in 92. It was also released on Dr. Dre's album First Round Knockout in 96. The song was also released on the Doggy Stuff album in 2005, and it was released on the Doggy Style Hits album, which was released in 2008. As I already mentioned a couple of times in this video, there's also a radio edit available of Deep Cover, and this was released on the Deep Cover single, and it was also used for the music video. A second version of the song is titled 187, and this version features the same chorus as the soundtrack version, but it has entirely new verses from Dre and Snoop. The beat sounds similar to the original version, but it is slightly modified, and I like this version. It's also straight fire, and it was released for 2 tracks that appeared on the Chronic album that were also released as singles, and the 187 track was first released on the Dre Day and Everybody Is Celebrating vinyl single in 92, and after that it was also released on the Let Me Ride single in 93. In 2006 it was also released on the Chronicles Death Row Classics album, and it was also released in 2009 on the Ultimate Death Row Collection album. And there's also a third version of Deep Cover, and this one is known as 187 or 187, and this version is sometimes also referred to as the Deep Cover remix, and this version is the hardest of all versions available in my opinion, and it has the same alternate verses from Dre and Snoop as used on the 187 version that I just spoke about. The lyrics on the chorus are more explicit, and instead of 187 on an undercover cop, Snoop says 187 on a mother effing cop on the chorus of this version. The beat is also a little bit different, as if it is on steroids, which makes it bang even harder, and it also has some extra scratching on it. And this version was released on specific reissues of the Deep Cover original motion picture soundtrack as a bonus track, and it was also released on the 1 Million Strong album, which was a compilation album in 95. Besides that, it was also released on the Death Row Singles collection in 2007. And it was also supposed to be released on the Chronic album, and it was included in an advanced promo cassette, but fallout from the heavy metal band Body Count's band song Cop Killer prevented it, since the song is also about killing police officers, and that led up to the song being scrapped from the Chronic. In the near future I will also upload a detailed breakdown of Dr. Dre's album The Chronic, which also include information about all the leftover tracks that didn't make it on the album and alternate versions. So in that video I will elaborate more on the 187 deep cover remix that was supposed to be on the Chronic but was left off. So stay tuned for that. So that was a quick breakdown of all the different versions that are released of the deep cover 187 track. And if I had to choose one, I would go with the 187 deep cover remix, but really all the versions are banging, and feel free to share in the comments which version would you prefer if you had to pick one. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, there are also two other tracks that are related to the deep cover track, and the first one is an unreleased track that you can find online by Snoop and the Lady of Rage, and it's titled It's On, and it's sometimes also referred to as Deep Cover 2 Kill Another Cop. And according to various sources on the internet, this track was an outtake from the deep cover soundtrack and it didn't make it on the album, so therefore it was a leftover track. And on this track you can hear that Snoop also uses some of the same lines that Dr. Dre used in the 187 deep cover remix, and Snoop also uses some lyrics from the third verse that he used on the unreleased track Gangsta's Life, which is also straight fire. And for the beat, a sample was used from the Curtis Mayfield track titled Ride On for the Darkness. In the second half of the song, it has the same beat as the original version of Rat-Tat-Tat-Tat, which is an unreleased original version of the track that was later released on Dr. Dre's The Chronic album. You can find the original version of Rat-Tat-Tat-Tat also online. Now supposedly the original source of this track is the old website of Fosum's The Foreground in the mid to late 90s. And several tracks were leaked on it, and unfortunately all of them were in poor quality, such as the next episode, the original version by Dr. Dre and Snoop, Playing for Keeps, which was a track from Snoop featuring the Convicts, and also the first leak of the track Ho Hopper, which was a track from Dre and Snoop. And unfortunately these leaked tracks were supposed to be the best quality that they had, but let's keep our hopes up, and who knows, one day we might get to hear those tracks in better quality. Another track that has a connection with the deep cover record is a track by Big Pun and Fat Joe. And in 98 they released the track Twins Deep Cover 98 for Big Pun's debut studio album Capital Punishment, which was released in 98. And the idea for the song was suggested to Big Pun by Fat Joe, who liked the original song and he wanted to use the instrumental as something to appeal to listeners of both East Coast and West Coast rap. The song was released as a single in 97, and Snoop Dogg also made a brief appearance in the music video that was released for the song. So there you have it, a complete breakdown with everything you need to know about the classic deep cover track by Dre and Snoop, and which was in Snoop's own words, the birth of the rebirth. So the next time you listen to one of the versions of deep cover, now you know the full history behind this iconic record. Drop a comment if you like this video or if you have any additional information to share. And if you want to do me a big favor with a small action, just click on the like button and also subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate that. And by that, you also support this movement and also contribute to keeping the Death Row legacy alive. And if you like this video, also make sure to check out the other videos that are available on the channel. And if you don't want to miss any new uploads, make sure to click on the notification bell as well. So thanks a lot for watching this video to the end, and stay tuned for the next video coming your way soon, because I'm gonna drop some more bombs.